Hello and welcome to another Pixel Game Maker tutorial. Today we're going to go over the analog stick tilt plugin. It's actually very simple to use. And so with that said, let's get started. All right, so we will start off in the plugins tab here. I've already added the plugin, but if you haven't added it already, you can right click add official plugin, and here is the analog stick tilt. You just click OK and it will bring up this just exactly. So we do have two parameters. Now parameters are stuff that you need to set, and they come with a couple defaults. So basically you have your access threshold. This is more like the stick dead zone, where if you're just tilting the stick a little bit, it won't register until it gets to, in this case, 20% of the stick being tilted. Average that I see in games is about 25, so we can just change that if we want. And then a show runtime log. So you can enable it, disable it. I'm just going to disable it for this video. Now on the preview here, this is just a list of stuff that is available. You do not set anything in the preview. This just shows you what is available as far as runtime actions and then the link conditions go. All right. And then there is a help. It doesn't really say much other than controller ID, preset common variable, which is going to be handy here in a minute. So now that we have this installed, let's go to objects. And I already have the scene set up basically. So we have one scene where we're going to be moving this that you saw in the preview, where we're going to be moving this triangle and it's going to be rotating based on the way that I have the right stick. And then we have another one that is going to be checking scene 2 here. It's going to be checking how much tilt we're applying to the control stick. All right, so with the first part, this is literally how easy it is, okay? So the only thing that you have to make sure is you have to make sure that if you're wanting your character to rotate 360, that it is a 360 setup, okay? Meaning that this rotate auto generate is enabled, and that the, facing of it is initially downward, okay? So if it's facing initially down and this 360, this rotate auto generate is checked, you will have that rotation, that auto rotation. So this setup is very similar to my top-down project setup, where I have a movement object, and all this does is for the movement. So if I was to playtest here, and that's the wrong scene. So if I go to this scene right here, so if I was to playtest this, the movement is strictly the left, right, up, down. Notice that it's not rotating it at all. And so that is going to be handled with the stick. All right, so that is the movement object. Now you can see that I have a connected object of the player sprite. And so this object also has a connected object of the player gun. So this gun is just basically checking for an input and then it's going to fire. But the player sprite, this is where the rotation is going to be getting checked. And to be honest, you could have, because this is where you would have your idle and your walk and your animations for the player object basically. So you might want this rotate in a separate child object that is updating the parent, okay? And we can do this. But first, this is just the very simplest way to do this, all right? So you set up the animation and then you send it to a rotate loop that has take over motion. That way it's not interrupting the animation if you have one, all right? And then simply all we got to do is click add, go to plugins tab, and we click set move direction and move to the direction of the stick angle. All right, so we pick the stick. In this case, I'm just going to pick the right stick, and then we're going to specify the controller. Now, with this one, you can't use the object self controller ID. This will not work. You have to use the common player one controller ID. All right, so if we're player one, right, and then we want it to match the move direction. All right, and we click OK, and then the only thing that we have to do, because this only runs once, this is why we're doing a loop. All right, an unchangeable, I'm pretty sure, loop. Yep. So now that we have both those in, this is literally all we need to do to make the plugin work. And you can see that right now I can rotate the angle of the thing. And then I can shoot with the R2, I can shoot based off that angle. All right. Now this is just about the plugin. You can look at the bullet setup if you want to know how to make it shoot towards that angle. All right, but we're not updating anything in the get angle or the tilt here. That's just the bare bone way of making something match your angle of your stick, but you're not getting any information from it, okay? So now let's just say that you wanted to get information, like you only wanted it to work at certain angles, you only wanted it to work at certain tilts and stuff like this. Well, then there is a way to do this. So we can get rid of this current method, which is just a one runtime action to rule them all kind of a thing. And we can add a couple more. So the first one, we can get the angle stick tilt and get the angle stick azimuth, which basically just means angle. So if you ever see this word, just think angle and it will make sense. All right. And so we can add both of those. So in the get angle stick, the one thing that we're going to want is we'll just pick the general right stick. So you can see that we can actually specify the stick tilt on just single axes as well, which is kind of cool. But we just want the general right stick. And then we need to also specify the player one controller ID again in the common folder. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need a destination for this variable. And so what I did is in the object self is created two variables, and one is the tilt and one is the angle. So this one is the tilt, so we're gonna stash it in the tilt variable. And then this one is the angle one, so we really just repeat this and common controller ID and then the object self angle. All right. And so now that we've done this, we can copy this and put these into the rotate 2. And what I have here is I have a text that all it's doing, not this one right here, it's just updating based on that variable angle. And then it's also updating based off that variable tilt. Okay, so now if we play, we can see the angle moving. We can see the tilt as I put more pressure on the stick here. But no, our character's not moving, and that's because we haven't set anything with that information. So what we would finally need to do, if you have to do it this way where you need to get information, then we would go to plugin here and we would click on this one, which is set move direction and move to the angle of the variable value. All right, so we'll add this one. And then on this one, we're just simply going to click object self, and it's the variable value for the angle. Okay, so we want to move towards the angle, and then we'll just hit OK. And then let's do the loop right here. And so now everything is working as normal. Here's 270, which is perfect. And then we go downward, and that should be 180. And then we go like this, should be 90. And then up is 0. All right, so it's 0 through 359. And then you can fire accordingly. You can see how much the tilt is. So you could say, you know, you could have a tilt power of if you're over 20 but under 70, you're walking. Like, well, I can't really do that here. But and then if you're over 70, then you're running. So you could have that kind of logic now with this information getter. And that's why I think that this information would be better getting in a child object and then using it. So for instance, we could have a child object right here that would be the angle, the stick, we'll just say, right? And I'll just make this quick, but we could put the loop in here where we take these ones and we put them in here and we make this looping, right? So unchangeable, unchangeable. So these would be looping constantly to get the angle. And then this one, instead of running them right here, would just be doing this. The only thing that we'd have to say is, I guess I'll just show an example here. So stick info. And the only thing is that instead of setting it from the object self, it doesn't have it. So we'd be setting the plugin part to the angle. And then on this one, we would be setting the plugin part to the tilt. And then we'll go like this and put that in here. Loop 1, loop 2. And then if we start like this, oh, I need to add it as a child. Sorry, this one's sorted on the fly here. So then we can say stick info and get the stick info here. There's many ways you can grab this info. And there we go. It's working just like that. And we are getting the info separate from the plugin part. All right, so now let's move on to the tilt checking, which is going to be scene 2. So I'll just set up scene 2 here. And we can see that quite simply, all we're doing is we're getting the analog stick tilt. We're using the same method. This object has a right stick tilt here, and then we're just looping it back and forth. And on the text here, we're showing the tilt. So we're still showing the tilt, but we also have another object on there that's in this action island that is checking for the tilt. So it's checking if the tilt is under 50, then it's going to say tilt under 50. And if it's over 50, it's going to say tilt over 50. All right. And so what we're doing for checking this is we're using one of these plugin conditions, which is called analog stick tilt, right? And so let's go back into the one that I got set up here. We're getting it from the right stick. We're getting it from the common controller 1, and we're checking if it's greater than or equal to 50. Now we could also do a object variable as well. So we could have a dynamic changing variable. And notice that if you do have this one selected, but you also have a value right here, the object will be the higher priority. So it will use this one over this check, for instance. So we'll just use a hard set 50 for this. And then on the one back, we're checking if it's less than 50. And so here we go with the right stick. Now we can start to tilt it here. And you can see that when it's over 50, it's showing over 50. And when it's under 50, it's showing under. And then you'll also notice that when we drop off below around 25, it instantly goes to 0. Dead zone, or the access threshold that we set up at 25. All right. And so yeah, those are the main things. There's also the angle right here, which is pretty self-explanatory. If your angle is at a certain area or in a certain direction or whatever, then this will trigger, kind of a thing. All right, so now for some extras, okay? And these are for the more advanced users that want to start doing some cool stuff. So for instance, you can see that right here we need a loop, right? We need a loop to actually set the direction. Well, we can actually change this to where we could just be looping this constantly depending on what action you're in. So if we go to File, we go to Open Project Folder, and we go to plugins right here. Now, this is the only plugin that I have. If you have a lot of plugins and you don't know what to do, a quick tip is that you can actually export this. So you can export this plugin. I'll just show you an example right here. We can export it right here. We'll just say analog plugin number, because we're trying to find out the number, because the issue with doing it like this is that we won't know which plugin number it is. It automatically assigns it, and unless you have a little bit of plugins where you could guess, like mine, but if you don't, then you'd have to do this. So we'll go to downloads, and then this is the export. You can actually just unzip this. So we'll just extract it, and then we can go to here. And if we click on plugins, we now know that this plugin is the 001 that was inside this project. All right. So that's a cool little trick on how to know which plugin you got. All right. So we can get out of that and we can go to this. So I'm going to open this in the editor here. And let's, there we go. Okay, so we're going to go down and we can, let's see here, we can get this utilities up. We'll get some of these up here. We can get this up. And now we're in the locale functions. We can get that up. And okay, here we go with the execute object. So this is the get tilt. So we don't want the get tilt. We want the set. Here's the, and actually I'll just make this easier. Okay, so here's the get angle. We know that one. Here's the move based on the angle. And that's not the one that we want either. This is the one, the move by variable. Well, to be honest, we would want both of these. But anyway, let's just do by the one that we already have set up. So this is by the variable right now. Okay, so we can come down here and we can see that after this is all done, it breaks. And what happens is it then instantly goes to return AGT action commands, yada, yada, command behavior next. Now this command behavior next, this is what stops the runtime action from running again. Okay, this is like, okay, go to the next runtime action. This one is done. So what we actually can do And this is in the API, by the way. If we zoom in here, we can see on page 6 that it says that when calling the execute push pull, that it does a behavior command loop. All right. So what we could do here is we could, and what this is going to do is this is going to allow it to loop in your runtime action. So we could go here and we can copy this and put it right here as well. And we could remove the break. You can see that it kind of faded out there, but that's fine. We can just leave it right there. But on this one, we're going to say behavior loop. And just make sure that, yep, command behavior loop, command behavior loop. Okay. So this one I've opened up directly from the plugins here. So I'm just going to save it. And we can go here, go to our object. And now I'm just going to make this link not do anything. All right. And so if we click on play, we can see that it's still working right there. But let's go to scene 2 and show you that it will still work. And so there we go. It's constantly rotating, and it only needed one action. Now I can just delete this all just to prove that. And we could just name this, walk. And there we go. We have it constantly looping. Now the only problem with this, it's going to be constantly throwing in runtime action. For instance, if we go to show runtime log, you can see that it's just constantly bombarded with this stuff. So it's going to be harder to read things. But if you really, really needed one action for some reason, you can do this via script by just adding this, okay, return loop. And the reason why I said you'd probably want it here too as well, because this would be another place where you could, again, add it like that. Now, what I'm going to do for the sample project is I'm just going to have these for you, but they're going to be commented out. So if you wanted to make them loops, you just go into this file and you would know where to grab it at least. All right. So now we'd go like this and save it. But now, unfortunately, this will not work. It will run once, but it won't rotate again. Okay. So I'm going to add this back out, and then we'll go over the last thing. All right, so now that our loop is set up again, we can now go to the last thing, which is going to be controlling your movement speed based on the tilt power. All right, now this is pretty cool. This was actually from Standard Enemy, so big kudos to him for putting this script together that we'll be using. All right, so the first thing we need to do is that this is going to control the sprite. So we've done everything to control the sprite rotating. Now we want to control the movement speed. So what we're going to do is in the player movement object is where we're going to do that. So we're going to need a couple things. This time we're going to be grabbing based off the left stick because remember the rotation was based off the right stick, but this one's going to be based off the left stick. So we're going to have a move speed variable, which I'm going to set to 2 as a base. That's just going to represent the speed. And you can see that our speed right now, horizontal and vertical, is 2. So you're going to want to set this move speed to whatever you want the actual speed to be. And then we're going to need another one, and we could call this, left stick tilt, or just quite simply, we could just do tilt. All right. And this one does not need to be kept on save, and we can just go like this. All right, so now we have these variables to catch these values and to use these values from. The one thing that we'll just do real quick before we get into where we're gonna put the script is we're gonna need to get info on the left stick. So now that we have the variable saved, we can now in our stick info check. So this is another reason why it's nice to have your child object getting this stuff is we can add another check for a stick tilt for the left stick this time, the same controller ID, and then we want it to be on the player movement tilt variable. So that's where we're going to be putting that. And then we just need to make sure that we have it in the loop so that we're constantly getting the left stick tilt now. And so now in the player movement, we're going to run an async function. Now there's a couple ways we could do this with this object. If we only ever had one state, I would quite simply just have a blank box like this, and then we would add a script. I usually color my scripts yellow links so that I know where they're at. And we can then run a execute script, and this is where we run the script. And this script would be checking every frame, and it would never go into this action because that's not the kind of link that's not the kind of script that we're making. We're making a script that's going to be every frame. But let's say that you had a few things. Let's say that you had a movement, and then you had a pause state, and then you had a ice slippery state or something like this. Then you'd have to have this link in every one, and it could get a little more unorganized. So we're going to pull out a common action async process. So we're going to go to common actions, going to make one. We'll call this async, and it's specifically going to be the move speed or move speed update, basically. And I'm going to make sure that it never leaves. It'll never get in here, but it's always nice to just have a little backup. Or actually, maybe in this case, we would want unconditionally, so it does get out if it accidentally, for no reason at all, goes in there. All right, so now in our action program, we can see it right here. I will just stretch this out so we can see it and yellow it, so it's all one color. And now we can go into here and we can click on execute script. So now let's look at what the script actually is. All right, so thanks to standard enemy for the script. Basically, we are grabbing the self, and I'll get this out of there. All right, so we're grabbing the self because remember, we're on the movement object now. So we're grabbing the movement object, then we're grabbing the move speed variable that we've set, all right? And then we're grabbing the stick tilt, all right? And remember, this is being updated by the child object, so we will have an accurate value. And then we're doing this variable, move speed based on the tilt, and this is using a ternary check, all right? Now, if you're not familiar with these, this is basically like saying an if statement. So this is saying like if stick tilt, which is this value, is equal to 0, all right? So it's basically checking an if. Actually, I'll just write this out. So we're basically saying if stick tilt equals 0, all right? So then with your ifs, you have an else, right? You can have an if this, else this. So it's asking a question mark. So if it is equal to 0, then it's going to run here. This is the well, actually, let's continue here. So it's checking if this is true. If it is, it's going to run this. It's going to run this first out value right behind the question mark. Else, this, let me zoom in here. This colon is representing else, then it's going to represent this value. So it's basically saying this. If stick equals 0, right here, so if it's true, then this move speed based on tilt equals 0. That's basically what this part says. And now we need to add the else. Move speed is going to equal this. So basically this one line of code, the ternary, this ternary variable is this whole if else statement. So normally if we were going to do this, we would have to first declare the variable and then we would have to run this if check, right? So now with this, we can just remove all of this and it's basically saying that same thing. All right, so basically we're checking if it's moving, and if it is moving, we are basing the speed, the move speed, based on the tilt power. All right, that's what this part's doing. And then what we're doing, and we can actually get rid of this, is then we're setting the 23 and 24 variable, which is the horizontal speed and the vertical speed. So we're setting both those values with this new value of the power. All right, so now we can take this script, go into here, and we can playtest. And now this is using the left stick, and you can see that we're going slow. We're moving a little slower, and then if I press it all the way, we move fast. So now you can get a little gauge, or you can now walk or move fast depending on your power. So that's pretty cool, pretty handy. And so, yeah, with that, that's it for this plugin and the couple extra cool things you can do. If you would like, if there's any questions, comments down below, the YouTube comments or on the Discord or Steam forums, and we'll get you figured out. With that said, we will see you at the next video.